So today we've really focused on some common classroom challenges that international students might face or that faculty or advisors or people in offices might also come across when working with international students. One of the first things that international students can struggle with, especially when listening to lectures, is word recognition. And this might slow a student down. You might see a student using their phone more than you want them to. It might be against, some of the policies that you aspire to hold up in your course. And so you have to think about, are there any strategies that you can offer an international student that will help them better understand your lecture? Can you post PowerPoints ahead of time? So that students can review them and know those core or keywords in the lecture content. Perhaps they could use their phone in better ways, maybe using recording software as well. You can always pair partners up or leave more time for comprehension checking questions throughout lectures where students can pair up, compare notes, maybe figure out those words that they didn't recognize throughout the lecture.
Okay, the second challenge deals with feedback and handwriting style. So when you're responding to students' work and you're giving them feedback on their papers, their exams, etc., be sure not to use cursive. Okay, these days, many students who are studying English in their home countries never learn cursive at all. And in fact, I think even some domestic students aren't very familiar with cursive. So try to eliminate using cursive in feedback and also on the board when you're teaching. Don't use acronyms or colloquialisms or slang in your feedback to the student. Try to be very clear and again, focus on the meaning of the paper or the essay rather than the grammar. Prepositions and articles and perhaps verb tenses will all have small errors for many years to come. So make sure that you're reading for meaning and not for grammatical errors. And make sure that you address the student by whatever name they want to be called when responding and giving feedback as well.
Speed of delivery and processing time. This is something that's extremely challenging for international students. And again, it's related to listening skills and also reading skills. So international students, if they're second language students, they're always going to need a lot more time to process what they've heard, to process what they've read. So bear this in mind if you're going to finish your lecture very, very fast. Make sure to go over the key points, make sure to post the lecture on Canvas, and make sure to review that content and go over the key concepts the next day as well. Be careful about your language. Definitely use synonyms. Avoid cultural references or colloquial language that the student might get hung up on and they're no longer able to really hear the content because they're focused on some kind of word or expression that they didn't understand. That's all going to slow down their processing time. At the same time, your speed of delivery just continues and continues.
When a student comes to your office or on other occasions when you're maybe one-on-one with a student, don't be surprised if they don't catch on to social cues right away. Remember, social cues are culturally bound. So, for example, if you think you've finished with a student in your office, but she doesn't seem to be leaving, you might just directly tell her, okay, it's time to go now, bye, right? Or, oh, please go ahead. She may be waiting for permission from you to leave. This is also true in other situations as well. When you expect a student to respond to you in certain ways, it may be a cultural faux pas for them regarding levels of formality and directness.
Higher cultural references and text selection. So that was another thing we focused on. When you're choosing a text to look at with your class, or when you're choosing a video or a listening, it's really important to preview that video with international student goggles on. Make sure that there aren't too many cultural concepts or references in that text or that listening that are going to be obstacles for an international student. There are a lot of ways in which a dictionary won't help an international student if there are many cultural references inside of a text or inside of a listening. And these are things that, again, the international student will need much more time to unpack each concept, perhaps even just in one small paragraph, compared to a domestic student. You can, of course, choose these texts, but if you do, make sure that your international students have the resources they need and the time they need to, again, unpack those concepts.
Especially in the beginning of a course, when you're referring to things like the TA or the common exam time, be sure that you explain these things to all of your students. Not only international students will be puzzled by these, but also your freshman students will need some direction as well. You can never underestimate the amount of knowledge that they might have about the university. So be as clear as possible regarding university situations, locations, and policies.
Another very important thing for international students and for any person, at the core of our identity is our name. And in class, we want everybody to say our name correctly, and we want our peers to be able to say it, our teacher to be able to say it. It really relates a lot to our success in participation, in group work, etc. So we recommend really getting to know your students' names, and you might have to become the student if you see an international name that you don't know how to pronounce. Approach the student, practice, drill yourself on the name as many times as you can, practice it over and over, write it phonetically on your roster if you need to, and more importantly, allow other students to learn each other's names as well. You can group students, you can use name cards, you can use introduction activities or warmer activities to allow all students in the class to learn how to pronounce each other's names. But this is extremely important. And again, a student will be very hesitant to participate in class if a professor constantly mispronounces their name or if a peer doesn't really know their name.
The last common classroom challenge is one that we've actually already mentioned, and that is the use of colloquial and informal language in class. We all want to be entertaining and use entertaining language when we're teaching, but don't do that at the expense of second language learners. Things like phrasal verbs, to catch on, to miss out, to make up. All of these, usually they all have one-word synonyms that you can use instead that are much clearer to the international student. Many times the synonyms have cognates in other languages or are based on Latin. So for example, instead of saying to chip in, you could say they could contribute. Contribute is much more likely to be a word that the student knows than chip in. Also, realize that your students may get stuck on these expressions. If you use a lot of them, they may be back trying to figure out what the last phrasal verb means while you've gone on to other things. So being clear in your language, using synonyms, using definitions is not only good for your international students, but your domestic students as well.